When Isaac visits his fiancee's family, he's met with hostility, not for who he is, but for what he lacks: a college degree. Things take a dark turn when his future father-in-law berates him and even insults his family. Just as the situation spirals out of control, someone unexpected arrives, and the power dynamics shift dramatically. What happens when the true identity of Isaac's family is revealed? And who will stand up for him in this intense confrontation? You won't believe how it all unfolds. High school graduates are worthless. A member of the Davis family can't be without a university education. How could we present that to society? There's absolutely no such thing as being worthless. My brother worked so hard for me. A decent parent would never think of sending their child into the world with only a high school diploma. Barely finishing high school? Raised by such shameless parents, no wonder you're shameless too. So what if your brother worked hard? That's just your subjective opinion. Objectively, it's worthless. You can say whatever you want about me, but please, don't insult my parents and brother. I was about to marry a woman who was a doctor. However, when I went to greet her parents, her father learned that I was a high school graduate. He started vehemently opposing our marriage, saying it would disgrace the family. In his rage, he began insulting not only me, but also my parents and brother. Then my brother, who arrived late, heard the rude words of my future father-in-law and became furious. The father-in-law, who had been one-sidedly insulting me, turned pale when he recognized my brother's face and began to regret his words. Still, he refused to apologize to me, but the most unexpected person exploded with emotion, leading to a surprising turn of events. My name is Dylan Thompson. I work in the sales department of a company that sells medical equipment. I am 28 years old and currently busy with wedding preparations and work. My fiancée is a woman named Grace Davis, who is a year younger than me. Grace has just turned 27 and already runs her own hospital as a doctor. In America, you can obtain a medical license from the age of 24, and a 2-year internship is mandatory. Therefore, becoming a doctor at this age is an exceptional career speed. Typically, doctors open their own practice after 40, and even in their 30s, it's considered quite early. Grace becoming a doctor at almost the minimum age had special circumstances. Grace's family had produced many doctors since her great-grandfather's time, and they were well-known local figures. Her father and grandfather are also doctors, and she grew up in an environment surrounded by many relatives who are doctors. Naturally, Grace thought she would also become a doctor when she grew up. It's not just a matter of wanting to become a doctor. Grace had the intelligence and mental strength to endure the difficult studies and training. With her innate competitiveness, Grace consistently achieved top grades in medical school and was expected to have a bright future. She bore the expectations of the Davis family to further enhance their honor. There were various circumstances that led to my marriage to Grace, a brilliant figure, despite me being just a regular office worker. I first met Grace when I visited her hospital for a sales job of medical equipment. Even shortly after opening her practice, Grace was highly regarded for her surgical skills and had the demeanor of a doctor with decades of experience. In person, Grace was strict and uncompromising in her work, not allowing vague answers, but she did not use her family's influence to intimidate others. She treated everyone with a flat attitude and quickly trusted those who dealt with her sincerely. Grace's natural beauty also made me secretly look forward to visiting her hospital for work. But Grace was an important client, and I never acted beyond my professional duties. Our relationship changed when a severely injured girl was brought to Grace's hospital after an accident. The middle school girl had been hit by a car that jumped onto the sidewalk during a holiday outing. Although her life was not in danger, she had injuries that could leave lasting damage to her limbs. Grace successfully performed emergency surgery, but the damage to her legs was severe, and depending on her recovery, she might face lifelong difficulty walking. Grace did everything she could to ensure a perfect rehabilitation system for the girl. Seeing her efforts, I offered as much support as possible from my medical equipment company, searching for the best rehabilitation equipment for her.
The car that hit her was modified to be low, causing severe damage below her knees. She'll need a specially shaped device to walk straight again.
I understand. I'll contact manufacturers that deal with walking aids. After consulting with Grace, I reached out to the manufacturers I had connections with, but all I received were responses stating that making a single custom modification would be cost-prohibitive and labor-intensive. According to Grace, if the patient could maintain a balanced weight distribution for about 2 months while building muscle, she could walk almost like a healthy person. However, the extent of damage to each leg was different, and their recovery rates varied. To evenly distribute weight during the rehabilitation period, a highly specialized custom device was necessary. Furthermore, the device settings would need to be adjusted almost daily to match the condition of both legs. Grace, who already had numerous other responsibilities, couldn't provide such focused attention. Of course, continuing rehabilitation with existing products would still help the patient walk. But in that case, the bones on each side would heal differently, resulting in a very distinctive gait, which greatly disheartened the middle school girl. Grace, while feeling compassion for the girl, showed a pained expression, saying, "There's nothing more we can do. I have an idea. Let me try everything I can." I reflexively offered my help. Grace, looking slightly puzzled, said, "If you have any ideas that could help, please," and begged to me, just a vendor. I immediately reached out to my contacts in the equipment manufacturing industry and got introduced to a skilled craftsman who used to make custom tools by hand. The craftsman was over 70 years old and had retired from the front lines, living a life of crafting as a hobby. When I suddenly contacted and rushed to him with my story, he was reluctant, saying he had no experience making things for the human body. But after several visits and repeated pleas, he finally agreed to take on the challenge. Although he said he couldn't guarantee success, he ordered the blueprints for existing rehabilitation equipment, analyzed their structure, and quickly drew up several designs. I took these designs to Grace, who selected the one that seemed most suitable for the patient. After several prototypes, we completed a rehabilitation device tailored specifically for the middle school girl. The craftsman visited the hospital daily, continuously adjusting the device's delicate balance. After 2 months of rehabilitation, the girl could walk so naturally that it was almost unnoticeable. The girl and her family cried with joy, grateful for Grace's dedication. This experience led the craftsman to establish a company making custom rehabilitation equipment, now focusing on training successors. Grace was deeply grateful for my efforts in this matter. However, at this point, while Grace and I had developed a strong trust as a doctor and a vendor, it had not yet evolved into a personal relationship. But later, I was summoned by Grace in a stern tone.
Dylan, you hid something from me about the rehabilitation equipment development, didn't you?
The patient has already recovered and been discharged, hasn't she? What are you talking about now?
It's not about the patient. You paid all the development costs for the equipment out of your own pocket, didn't you?
Well, yes. The company was slow to act, so I had to move on my own. It was hard to request reimbursement from the company.
Why did you do that? You should have charged all the expenses to us.
Well, it was an unprecedented case, and while I was figuring out how to handle it, things just progressed.
I just learned about the amount today. When I contacted the craftsman because the bill was too low, he said that all the development costs and his fees had been paid in cash by you, Dylan.
Well, I never ended up telling the company about it. Even if I did, I knew they would reject such a one-off project as not worth the effort and cost.
So in this case, you only billed for the final product, and you paid all the development, prototype, and daily adjustment costs yourself.
Yes.
Why didn't you tell me? Did you think I would be stingy with those expenses?
No, that's not it.
Then why?
I thought if we estimated the costs up front, the patient herself would have stopped it.
What?
To be honest, the patient's parents weren't financially well off. If we gave them a proper estimate, the parents might have agreed, but the patient would have refrained and said she would stick with existing equipment.
But you didn't know the patient at that time, did you? You had told me a bit about the patient's behavior, so I could roughly guess her personality.
I figured that if the costs were high, she would quietly give up. So I couldn't present the full costs.
Did you take out a personal loan or something?
Believe it or not, I'm frugal. I've been saving for 10 years since becoming an office worker, so I had some savings.
You've lost weight recently, haven't you? Your face looks thinner.
Well, I've been a bit busy lately.
Don't underestimate a doctor's eye. Your skin is rough. You haven't been eating properly, have you?
Grace's words hit the mark. Since getting involved in this matter, I had spent all my savings and most of my salary. I had only been eating one meal a day, usually plain pizza. When Grace found out, she forcibly took me out for a luxurious meal. She also got my apartment address from me and sent a large amount of food the next day. Later, she made me confess the total amount I had spent and even offered to reimburse me. But I insisted that it was something I wanted to do, and I refused to take the money. Grace wouldn't give up either, and we argued for days over this burden. It must have looked strange from the outside, as we were arguing over who should bear the cost, with both of us insisting on paying. Eventually, I agreed to accept half the amount, and Grace reluctantly conceded. Through this debate, I began to feel attracted to Grace's straightforward nature, and she seemed to appreciate my earnest attitude. Later, when I visited Grace's hospital for work, she asked me out when we were alone. Even then, I tried to refuse, saying our family backgrounds were too different, but Grace dismissed that as old-fashioned thinking, and we argued extensively, but I eventually gave in. Soon after we started dating, I stopped noticing the differences in our social standings. Within 6 months, we decided to get married. One day, I was taking Grace to meet my only family, my brother Hudson. Our parents had died in a car accident when I was still in elementary school. Hudson, 9 years older than me, was a university student at the time. Despite his busy studies, he worked part-time jobs, using both his earnings and our parents' savings to get us through tough times, and supported me until I graduated high school. To me, my brother was like a parent. When I told him I was getting married, he was very happy. However, when he learned that my fiancée was the daughter of a famous local doctor family, he became a bit cautious. Of course, I'd like to welcome her with open arms, but with her being from such a notable family, won't there be some difficulties? I'm old enough and have seen a lot. I understand what you're saying, but Grace understands me deeply and still wants to be with me. I'm sure you'll understand once you meet her. Well, if you're determined, there's nothing I can say. All right. I'm looking forward to meeting Grace. Hudson has always been cautious, and after our parents died, he became even more so after dealing with various adult schemes. Still, he sticks to the idea that no matter who it is, I won't form a preconceived notion until I meet and talk to them. Because of this, I believed that once he met Grace, everything would be clear. To cut to the chase, Hudson's meeting with Grace went exceedingly well. Grace confidently told my brother that she wanted to marry me, and my brother immediately accepted her, welcoming her with a smile.
I heard about you from Dylan. You've been like a parent to him since your parents' accident.
I provided some financial support, but I wouldn't call it being a parent. Dylan is strong-willed. He grew up just fine without me doing much.
I see. I've seen Dylan's inner strength too, many times. He's quite stubborn once he decides something. It's been tough.
Grace said this playfully, and Hudson quickly responded. I'd love to hear more about that. I've been looking forward to hearing why someone of your standing decided to marry Dylan.
Haven't you told your brother about us?
I only know that you became close through work, but Dylan never shares the details. Once he decides not to say something, he won't easily confess. I figured I had to ask you, Grace.
Dylan, you didn't need to hide it.
I didn't mean to hide it. I just didn't say because no one asked. Dylan always evades and ends up saying nothing.
Yes. Even when he started talking to me honestly, he was always like that. The more important the matter, the less he speaks openly about it.
Please tell me about that turning point.
Sure.
Grace then told Hudson about how I went all out to help the girl with her rehabilitation and later clashed with her over the money issue. By the time she finished, Hudson was laughing heartily. I see, Grace. You seem to understand Dylan's inner self very well. If you wish to marry him, there shouldn't be any problems.
Yes, I've never met anyone as honest and straightforward as Dylan.
But Dylan, you did go overboard. Hearing about a car accident victim, you must have felt compelled to help. But spending all your savings and skipping meals is too much. When we were short on money, you also cut back as much as possible to save money for me. Yeah, but I can't imagine doing that for someone else. Your strong will is admirable, but it's dangerous to see you go full throttle without brakes.
If left alone, Dylan will likely do something like this again. So I want to be by his side and ensure he doesn't overdo it.
That's great. If someone like you understands Dylan so well, I can be at ease. Watching the two of them bond over me, I felt completely left out. To be honest, I was worried about the difference in our family backgrounds. But if you have made up your mind, I have nothing to say.
Sure, there are some difficult people in our family, but they'll understand eventually.
Seeing my brother and Grace hit it off so well on their first meeting made me happy. Oh, by the way, I'm scheduled to greet Grace's parents soon. Could you come as my stand-in parent? When I asked Hudson, he agreed to come without hesitation. The week changed, and the day arrived for me to meet Grace's parents. I was extremely nervous about meeting them, but I steeled myself, determined not to show any weakness in front of Grace. It was my first time visiting Grace's home, and I was overwhelmed by its grandeur. A majestic house that could be called a mansion stood on a hill, surrounded by an even larger estate. For the first time in my life, I saw multiple people working in roles called housekeepers. I couldn't help but marvel that Grace, raised in such an environment, hadn't developed a condescending attitude. Grace had attended local public schools due to her mother's strong wishes, which likely helped her understand that there was no special difference between herself and others. Grace greeted me at the front door.
You look pretty stiff. Relax, we don't bite.
Easier said than done, and my brother being late isn't helping. Hudson was supposed to come with me, but he got called into work at the last minute and said he'd be a little late.
You'll be meeting my parents frequently from now on, so brace yourself.
Encouraged by Grace, I took a deep breath and headed to meet her parents. Isaac, my future father-in-law, was a 50-year-old doctor. Grace's quick transition to running her own practice was greatly supported by her family's connections and her father's financial backing. Despite his age, his hair was quite white, his eyes were sharp, and his voice was strong, easily imagining him in a lab coat, confidently leading his hospital. Mary, my future father-in-law, sat quietly behind him, only speaking to greet me initially. But her occasional glances felt very kind. Having lost my parents in an accident, I felt a warmth from her motherly presence. In such situations, I was not as relaxed as my brother and remained quite stiff. Even so, Grace helped lighten the mood with her timely interjections, and our conversations managed to elicit some laughter. It was about the time Hudson was expected to arrive. Feeling relieved that he would easily fit into the conversation, the atmosphere suddenly changed with one comment from Isaac. So, Dylan, which university did you graduate from? In an instant, Grace and her mother's expressions hardened. I didn't pay it much mind and answered honestly. Well, I didn't attend university. I got a job right after high school. What did you say? Isaac's voice became stiff and harsh. Well, I graduated from high school, but didn't go to college. High school? What is this, Grace? You never told me this.
There's nothing to tell. Why does it matter?
Don't be ridiculous. Yelling at Grace, Isaac stood up. The spacious living room fell into silence.
Don't shout.
Enough. You be quiet. Turning to me, his glare was filled with hostility. Dylan, you know about our family, right? Yes, of course. Everyone in this area knows about you. Then why did someone like you approach Grace, knowing what we have built here? I was drawn to Grace's sincerity. Who asked for such naive sentiments? I'm asking why someone without the right status or background would dare to court Grace.
Dad, don't talk like that.
I said be quiet, Grace. I understand your point. I also thought at first that the difference in our family backgrounds might be too great. But you felt the difference and still thought your personal feelings could bridge that gap. I was cut off by a sharp rebuke. Don't think you can fool me with some cheap words. Grace is not just any person. She is crucial to the future growth of the Davis family. Who would let someone without a proper education have her? I understand what you are saying. But even if I only have a high school diploma, it's because my family supported me through everything. Supporting a child to get a high school diploma? Are you mocking me? A high school diploma is worthless. How can anyone associated with the Davis family not have a college education? It's not worthless. My brother worked himself to the bone for me. It's worthless. Completely worthless. No decent parent would send their child out into the world with just a high school diploma. They barely helped you finish high school. No wonder you turned out this way, raised by such disgraceful parents. What does it matter that your brother worked hard? That's just your opinion. It has no objective value. You can say whatever you want about me, but please don't insult my parents or my brother. Shut up. Are you trying to order me around? Your parents and brother's poor judgment led to this. Get out. You are not allowed near Grace again. With the power of our family, I can ensure your company is banned from every hospital in the area. What? Insulted even my deceased parents. I argued back, but when he threatened my company, I lost my momentum. If I said anything rebellious, my company might suffer. As I hung my head, Isaac yelled, "Didn't you hear me? Get out."
That's terrible. You don't know anything about Dylan.
With tears in her eyes, Grace stood up to argue, but the door to the reception room opened with a bang. Standing in the doorway was my brother Hudson, with a stern look on his face. "And who are you?" "Well, your shouting was quite loud. I could hear everything through the open window." My brother pointed to the open window, easily deflecting Isaac's anger. As Hudson walked across the room, it was clear he understood the situation. Without greeting, he walked straight to the center of the room. The housekeeper was unsure whether to let me through, so I came in on my own. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Davis. I'm Hudson, Dylan's brother." "You're his brother? Why are you here?" Isaac, about to shout, suddenly fell silent, staring at Hudson. It seemed he recognized Hudson's face and name. Hudson Thompson, from Smith Lab. Smith was the name of my brother's mentor, a renowned professor. "So you know him." "My fame is nothing compared to Professor Smith's." Isaac, now pale, turned to Grace. "What is this, Grace? You never mentioned he was related to Dylan."
I knew that if I told you Dylan's brother was a famous doctor, you'd warmly welcome him, but then you wouldn't see Dylan for who he is. I wanted you to meet him without any preconceptions, even if only at first. So that's why I didn't tell you anything.
Unbelievable. If I'd known he was related to someone as distinguished as Hudson, I wouldn't have treated him so poorly. So are you saying that if a well-known surgeon like me is backing him, you'd welcome high school graduate Dylan as Grace's husband? No, that's not what I meant. Just to clarify, our parents died in an accident when Dylan was in elementary school. What? I was in medical school then. I was about to drop out to support us, but it was Dylan who strongly wished for me to become a doctor who could save lives. Oh. Mary, who had been silent, let out a small gasp. Do you understand? Right after losing his parents, Dylan told me to prevent others from dying in accidents. He was still in elementary school. He was ready to endure severe financial hardship until I became a surgeon. The resolve it took. Well, upon hearing you slander our parents and me, I was ready to call off this engagement. I can't let Dylan into a family ruled by someone like you.
Dylan works at a medical device company to help those who are sick or injured. He never cared about his salary or social status.
Because of Grace's character, I wanted her to be with Dylan, but it seems the Davis family has no place for him.
I'll renounce the Davis name today.
What are you saying?
If the Davis family rejects Dylan, then I'll leave. You can do what you want with my hospital. There are plenty of relatives who can take over.
I won't allow such nonsense. Wait, Grace. This isn't something to decide right now. Think about the patients who rely on your hospital. If it's about the hospital's ownership, I can take care of it and hire Grace as the director. Hudson, what are you saying? Don't make hasty decisions here.
No, it's not up to me or your brother. It's up to my father if he changes his attitude. I won't have to take such extreme measures.
That's right. If you promise not to exclude Dylan, I won't disrupt this any further. If I accept Dylan, will everything be fine?
Yes, and if you apologize to Dylan for what you said, he'll forgive him, right, Dylan?
Of course. But it's not about me. If he retracts his words about my parents and brother, that's enough. No, he needs to apologize to Dylan properly. It's essential to make it clear that no one should cross certain lines, regardless of status. Well,
Dad, show some sincerity.
if you refuse, it's impossible for us to continue this relationship. How dare you say such things?
Dad.
Quiet. If you want to leave, then leave. I carry the honor of the Davis family, not just myself. No matter what you say, I can't apologize to someone who didn't even attend college. I stood up in silence. I couldn't bear to hear any more of Isaac's words. Without thinking, I started walking towards the door to leave. At that moment,
That's enough.
the usually quiet Mary raised her voice for the first time. Both Isaac and Grace looked at her in disbelief.
Honor of the Davis family, you say? You're always talking about the family. The family. I've endured it since our marriage, but I've reached my limit.
What are you saying all of a sudden?
Shut up, you disgrace. If Grace leaves because of you, then I'll leave with her. You can stay here alone and protect your precious family honor.
It's often said that calm people are the scariest when angry. But perhaps this Mary had never shown such anger since their marriage. Even the strong-willed Grace was stunned, unable to do anything but watch. But the most shocked was Isaac. Just moments ago, he had refused to apologize to me, even if it meant Grace leaving, even if pressured by my brother. Now he looked like a scolded child, frightened. You don't have to leave, do you?
Have you ever thought of me as an equal? You've always looked down on me. I endured it for the sake of family peace. But rejecting such a devoted man Grace brought home and then severing ties with her, I'm not going to stay silent and endure that. I've reached my limit.
Wait, please, calm down. Isaac clung to Mary, completely flustered. When I averted my gaze, I met the eyes of my brother and Grace, who also looked awkward. With the focus of the conversation suddenly shifting between my in-laws, the discussion about whether Isaac would apologize to me was left hanging. Reluctantly, my brother and I stepped outside into the garden, waiting for Grace to calm Mary. Ignored by Mary, Isaac wandered aimlessly around the room, looking lost. In the end, my brother and I promised the now calm Mary that we would come back another time for a proper introduction, and left. Eventually, Grace and I were able to get married as planned. The fear of Mary's wrath seemed to have silenced Isaac, who never again criticized my education or objected to our marriage. Grace has not withdrawn her statement that she would relinquish her position as the head of the hospital whenever her father commands. If that happens, my brother may end up buying the management rights of Grace's hospital, but that's just a legal matter and not yet decided. Grace remains nominally part of the family, but is emotionally detached, gradually distancing herself from relatives who prioritize family unity over all else. Though Isaac certainly dislikes the situation, he refrains from attacking me, knowing Grace would immediately declare estrangement. If Grace cuts ties, Mary is prepared to divorce him immediately. Having never imagined life without Mary, Isaac now lives cautiously, constantly trying to stay on her good side. What will happen to my in-laws, I don't know, nor do I think there's anything I can do. My pride lies in the fact that Grace and my brother help people suffering from injuries, and my only wish is to support them as best as I can. To do that, I will accept and do whatever I can, just as I always have.